Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, March 19th, 2025 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education and Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit Agenda Review Meeting. Tonight, we have a pretty full agenda, so we will get started right away with the Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit, and I will turn it over to Ms. Jennifer Solak.
Thank you and good evening. I have 9 items tonight under business and payments authorized. 25.01 are our daily payments for the month of February. 25.02 is to authorize payment to the Innovative School Summit, July 14th to 18th, for an administrator from the Neighborhood Academy to attend. 25.03 is payment to B&H Photo to purchase 25 Chromebooks and Chrome education licenses for the students at Hillel Academy. 25.04 is to authorize payment to CDWG for the purchase of 45 Dell Chromebooks and Chrome education upgrades for the students of St. Edmund's Academy. 25.05 to 25.08 is to authorize payment to Megan Yiladim Child Safety Institute for a 3-day training on the Safety Kid methodology for teachers, administrators, and students of yeshiva boys and girls schools. 25.09 is to authorize payment to Silver Lining Learning to provide a 4-day professional development on effective instructional practices to the teachers of St. Benedict the Moor. I have 2 items under business general authorization. 26.01 is to accept the audit report issued by the accounting firm of Mark C. Turnley of the financial operations of the IU for the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year. And 26.02 is the adoption of the IU budget for the 25-26 school year. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solak. Do we have any questions or comments from board members on the Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit agenda? All right, seeing none, thank you, and we will see you again next week. All right, now we will turn to the Pittsburgh Public Schools agenda. And I believe we are turning it over to Dr. Sean McNeil.
Good evening, everyone. There are 4 items under Education Proposal Grant Awards. I'm sorry, actually there are 5 items. Item 5.01 is to accept a grant to support the purchase of physical education equipment, supplies, and resources at Pittsburgh Phillips 5K through K6. Item 5.02 is to approve the submission and acceptance of a continuation grant application to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families to fund the Head Start and Early Head Start programs in the 2025-26 school year. Item 5.03 is to submit and accept a continuation grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Education to fund the Head Start Supplemental Assistance Program for the 2025-26 school year. Item 5.04 is to accept a grant award to purchase CTE-related equipment at Pittsburgh Alderdice, Brashear, Carrick, and Malayan 612. Item 5.05 is to submit and accept a continuation grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Education to fund the Pre-K Counts program for the 2025-26 school year. There are 4 items under Education Consultants Contracted Services. Item 6.01 is for a contract with Carnegie Mellon University to provide federal work-study interns. Item 6.02 is for a contract with Catapult Learning, LLC, for 3 job-embedded instructional coaching days to support ELA, math, science, and social studies teachers at Pittsburgh Classical 6-8. Item 6.03 is for a contract with Hello Neighbor to provide summer learning for Afghan and Ukrainian students in grades 6 through 12. Item 6.04 is to renew the contract with Martin Gregorio to serve as the medical consultant to PSE. There are 6 items under education payments authorized. Item 7.01 is to approve payment to the listed schools or organizations for providing extended school year services for students with disabilities. Item 7.02 is to approve payment to Mad Science of Pittsburgh to provide 5 45-minute programs to Pittsburgh Gifted Center Science Fair participants. Item 7.03 is to approve payment to Middle States Monitors who supported Brashear High School. Item 7.04 is to approve payment to Our Little Secret Cafe and Catering Services to provide a catered dinner for the CTE Senior Celebration. Item 7.05 is to approve payment to QBS Inc. for the certification of the Safety Care Behavioral Safety Training Program for students with exceptionalities, administrative staff, and other district staff to support students in crisis. Item 7.06 is to approve payment to Pittsburgh Cultural Trust for production costs associated with students performing in the Pierce Studio during the Voices and Visions exhibit. There are 14 items under the Education General Authorization. Item 8.01 is to approve the proposed policy revision to policy 1012, Parent and Family Engagement in Community. Item 8.02 is to authorize the Career and Technical Education Division to accept sponsorship donations associated with the 2025 CTE Senior Celebration for entertainment services. Item 8.03 is to accept a donation through Pittsburgh Cares to support East Hills fire victims. Item 8.04 is to accept a donation from Remake Learning Days 2025 Festival to provide funds for the purchase of materials, refreshments, and/or human resources related to Remake Learning events. Item 8.05 is to adopt the attached school calendar for the 2025-2026 school year. Item 8.07 is to approve 8 career and technical education students and 2 adult chaperones to attend the Pennsylvania State Skills USA competition. May have skipped an item. I think item 8.07. 8.07 is to approve participation in the Amplifying Learner Voice in CTE initiative. Item 8.09 is for approval to submit a budget revision application to the Office of Head Start for the 2024-2025 budget period to reallocate and repurpose Head Start funds. Item 8.10 is to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Institute for Learning through the University of Pittsburgh and the New Teacher Project to collaborate on a professional learning network project. Item 8.11 is to enter into a contract with Sunburst Workforce Advisors to centralize and consolidate the management services of its temporary healthcare-related professionals. Item 8.12 is to enter into a partnership agreement with the Challenge Program for all 612 and 912 schools. Item 8.13 is to approve up to 20 students and 3 staff members from Pittsburgh Alderdice High School to go on an educational trip to the Dominican Republic. And item 8.15 is to approve the proposed policy revision to policy 1000.1, public participation in board meetings. That concludes the education section of the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. Are there any questions or comments on this section from board members? Ms. Petrowski.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Walker. Just 2 comments. Ms. Yord mentioned this in her questions to the administration, and I'm glad that she brought it up. I was going to mention it today as well. But for 8.01, policy 1012, parent and family engagement, board members should notice that this did not go to policy workshop, and that is because during our pre-committee meetings and based on committee members' opinions and consultation with our law department, these are non-substantive changes to the policy, and so per our own board policy, we're able to send it right to the agenda. So obviously, please look at the red line and clean versions, but it was simply, some sentence restructuring, so nothing very substantive at all. And then 8.15 is our public hearing policy, and I'm just pointing it out that it's there because we did have a little bit of difficulty getting it on the agenda. And I apologize for the inconvenience for anybody who was looking for it, and thank you to those who pointed out that it was not on our agenda, but it's there now. Thank you.
Other comments, questions, concerns? Yeah, I don't know. Dave, the TV just went off in here. I don't know what happened. And it's back. Excellent. I will echo the sentiments on 8.15. I know that there was some confusion, not just with the policy, but with the signups for public hearings having a virtual option, even though the virtual option wasn't available yet. So, you know, I apologize for that. These things happen, but we were able to correct it fairly quickly, and I'm looking forward to us passing this one and getting back to a public hearing format that folks can participate in. So, all right, with that, then we will move on to the business section, and I will turn it over to Mr. Joseph.
Under proposals, grant awards, item 9.01 is for the acceptance of a grant award from the American Dairy Northeast Association NFL Fuel Up to Play grant. Item 9.02 is for the acceptance of a grant award from the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank Impact Grant. Under consultants and contracted services, there are 31 items. Item 10.01 is a lease renewal for employee parking spaces at Allegheny Traditional. Item 10.02 is a contract for drinking water quality testing and reporting for lead at various locations throughout the district. Item 10.03 is a contract to repair, sand, and refinish gym floors, including 2 new center logos and game lines at Mifflin and Westwood, and to sand refinish 2 gym floors and 1 auditorium stage, including new center logos and game lines at Langley. Item 10.04 is a contract for electrical work associated with air conditioning at Brookline. Item 10.05 is a contract for general work associated with flooring replacement and miscellaneous work at Obama. Item 10.06 is a bid for the purchase of supplies and furniture for the early childhood program. Item 10.07 is a bid for the purchase of school district-wide supplies. Item 10.08 is a contract for abatement work associated with flooring and miscellaneous work at the Roosevelt Early Childhood Center. Item 10.09 is a contract to furnish and install a new telescopic bleacher system at Alderdice. Item 10.10 is a contract for abatement work associated with flooring and miscellaneous work at Obama. Item 10.11 is a contract for drinking water quality testing, reporting for lead at various locations throughout the district. Item 10.12 is a contract to provide workers' compensation, medical case management, and vocational rehabilitation services. Item 10.13 is a contract for walk-in cooler and freezer replacement at Kappa. Item 10.14 is a contract to upgrade security systems at Clayton, Concord, Grandview, Sunnyside, Westwood, and Whittier. Item 10.15 is a contract for plumbing work associated with the water cooler replacement at the administration building. Item 10.16 is a contract for plumbing work associated with the installation of steam boilers at Alderdice. Item 10.17 is a contract to upgrade the PA system at Carrick, Clayton, Concord, Grandview, and Weil. Item 10.18 is a contract for early childhood playground equipment, early Head Start playground equipment relocation, furnishing, and installation of poured soft surfaces and playground accessories at Westinghouse. Item 10.19 is for the purchase of an K5 ELA screener. Item 10.20 is a contract for mechanical work associated with air conditioning at Brookline. Item 10.21 is a contract for general work associated with the installation of steam boilers at Alderdice. Item 10.22 is a contract for general work associated with flooring and miscellaneous work at the Roosevelt Early Childhood Center. Item 10.23 is a contract for general work associated with the stair tread replacement at Westinghouse. Item 10.24 is a license renewal for the eSchool Plus student information system. Item 10.25 is a contract for construction administration and system commissioning services for PA system upgrades at Clayton, Carrick, Grandview, and Weil. Item 10.26 is a contract for construction administration services and administration and system commissioning services to upgrade surveillance systems at Clayton, Concord, Grandview, Sunnyside, Westview, and Whittier. Item 10.27 is a contract for electrical work associated with the installation of steam boilers at Alderdice. Item 10.28 is a contract for electrical work associated with the water cooler replacement at the administration building. Item 10.29 is for the purchase of network monitoring software for all of the district's network hardware. Item 10.30 is a contract for mechanical work associated with the installation of steam boilers at Alderdice. And item 10.31 is a contract to repair, sand, and refinish gym floors, including new center logos and game lines at Alderdice. Under payments authorized, item 11.01 is for the approval of the daily payments for February. Under general authorization, item 12.01 is for the approval of a right-of-way to conduct a geophysical survey for surface testing on the grounds of Arsenal. Item 12.02 is for the approval of the Manchester Chateau Trid. Item 12.03 is for the approval of the yellow bus driver list for the period ending February 28, 2025. Item 12.04 is an amendment to our contract with Amcom Xerox. Item 12.05 is an amendment to our contract with Gateway Engineering. Item 12.06 is an amendment to our contract with Quad 3 Engineers. Item 12.07 is an amendment to our contract with UPMC Life Solutions. And item 12.08 is a notice of contract cancellation with Vital Signs. Under budget matters, there is a placeholder for 15.01 is a placeholder for the 2024 general fund budget transfer. Section 16 contains the travel reimbursement applications, travel report, and EBE report. Under new business, item 17.01 is for the ratification of a tentative agreement with the Pittsburgh Building and Construction Trades Council. Item 17.02 is a resolution authorizing Weiss, Burkhardt, and Kramer to work as co-counsel in the matter of Marie Webb et al. Versus the City of Pittsburgh. Item 17.03 is a resolution to schedule hearings to consider the permanent closure of certain Pittsburgh schools. Item 17.04 is a resolution for the request for the alert request for the Caroline project, and item 17.05 is a resolution for the alert request for the Dalian project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Questions or comments from board members on the business section? Ms. Shord.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walker. I have comments and a question on agenda item 17.03, the resolution to schedule hearings under section, schedule the hearings for the school closures. So my concern with putting this on the agenda right now is multiple fold. One is that I'm concerned that we've scheduled our community listening sessions for April that are going to be focused on board goals and board guardrails for the school district per our board coaching with the Council of Great City Schools. I'm concerned that if we vote to move forward with the school closure hearings, that's going to derail the community listening work that we're trying to do next month, because folks are going to be focused solely on the school closures, as they well should be, and we won't get the input that we're looking for in April. I'm also concerned about moving this forward right now because I fear that we need to anticipate the questions that the public is going to ask us and that they've been asking us for the last year around feeder patterns, transportation, where their kids are going to school. I know the school district has issued an RFP for a demographer, but people are going to ask those questions, and we likely will not have those answers by the time the public hearings start in the next few months. And it's more than just, I know that there are some school board members and members of the administration who might say, well, people are going to be mad if we're closing schools regardless. And yes, that is the case. We know that this is a tough decision, and we know as board members that we do have to close schools, and people are going to be frustrated. But it's more than just people being mad because we're closing schools at this point. It's more that people are going to be mad because they have been demanding the same answers for the last year from this board and from this administration. And we have not done our own due diligence to provide those answers to them. So if we say that this is a priority, that we know fiscally based on capacity that we have to close and consolidate our school footprint, then we need to resource that appropriately. We can't say that this is a priority and not put all of our board and administrative manpower behind doing our due diligence and getting people the answers that they deserve. Not just the public, but the board deserves more information than we have at this station. And so we really need to push to put all hands on deck to make sure that we do this well and do this right. We can't say it's a priority and then say, oh, but it's a bunch of extra work for us to do. We can't have it both ways. So those are my comments. My question, Mr. Walker, is for you as board president. At the meeting where this was presented at the end of February, it was revealed through discussion between a few board members and the administration that there was potentially a misalignment between some board member expectations of what the plan that was presented in February was going to entail and what the administration expected they were meant to present. So what will you do, Mr. Walker, to make sure that clearer instructions are given that represent the beliefs of the entire board moving forward so that we can get the information we need the first time around?
That's a great question. I think, you know, first and foremost, I think it involves individual board members and collectively us voicing our opinions when those decisions are being made, so that there, you know, if there is any difference of opinion on what is being asked of the administration, that comes out. And, you know, maybe it happened. I don't know if it did, because we ended up with the feasibility report that Dr. Walters presented, which in my opinion was what we asked for. You know, so I think there is a, you know, I think there has to be a candidness in our communication, both public and private, as we're making these decisions, so that when it comes time to make a decision, everybody feels clear on what the expectation is. But I will leave that for others who have comments. And if we want to stick on this one before we move to others, I think that's probably appropriate. Questions or comments on 17.03? Yeah.
Sorry. I do have other comments, but Ms. Yord, I want to make sure that answers your question before I speak.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Perhofsky. I think that means that I, as a board member, should make sure that all of my requests to the administration are in writing, and I'll make sure that I CC the rest of the board in any future communications regarding this, so that all of that information is provided to everybody, and I will take that on as a responsibility.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, I also have comments about 1703. So, you know, echoing a lot of Ms. Yord's concerns, but I think it's a big mistake this item is on the agenda for this month. You know, I remember during our February meeting, and, you know, at least in my subsequent conversations, you know, had asked for, do we have any budget items for these capital, or not budget items, but do we have any estimates for these capital improvements for the closures that are recommended? To my knowledge, board members have not yet received anything. You know, and as stewards of the school district and taxpayer dollars, I think it's irresponsible that the board would be voting on this item this month without any new information on the fiscal impact on the district. We are being asked to vote without any kind of estimated timeline, well, not any kind, but of when or how long improvements will take, or when schools would actually be scheduled to close. So, you know, our feasibility analysis, which, while I think, you know, Mr. Walker, to your point, is what we asked for, you know, at least myself as a board member realized that my expectations for that report had shifted, and I was expecting a more robust timeline. And I did voice that concern in February and in subsequent conversations, public and private. And I have not seen any change to that timeline. So really, the feasibility report to me still feels like it's this regurgitated information from ERS's report. It was updated, and I do appreciate the updates. But I would argue that it doesn't actually determine if any of this is feasible because we don't have the fiscal implications to any of it. You know, and as I was reflecting on this, and I always like to prepare because you can tell I'm reading from my screen, but, you know, as I was reflecting on this, I'm like, there's, you know, primarily three major things, you know, that families can consider when moving to an area is typically cost of living, job opportunities and how close they are to their homes, and of course, quality of schools. And so if we vote on this month, I feel like it is very inconsiderate, you know, to our current constituents and any future Pittsburgh resident or anybody who is considering enrolling their children in this district because of these unknowns. And we know that the health of the district depends on student enrollment, and we are neglecting to factor any of this information into this vote this month. You know, and for my own personal experience, my child is going to be starting preschool in 2026. And I apologize, Dr. Walters, I know I don't like to do gotcha questions, and I know you can't answer this, but can you tell me when she's going to attend Grandview, because that is going to be her new feeder school, as opposed to Roosevelt K-5?
That was a gotcha question.
Yes.
And so I'm unable to answer that for you right now, as you have indicated.
Yes.
However, she will be available. She will have the ability to attend a Pittsburgh public school.
Yes.
If that is her start time.
Yes. Same with the one on the way, you know, 2030, 2031, which is also crazy to think about, but I'm not even going to ask because we know, but we don't know when he will attend Grandview or if Roosevelt will be closed by then. And frankly, you know, it is a factor in my decision of whether or not my children are going to attend this district because there are so many unknowns. And I'm not going to get super into that. But so for me, the lack of an estimated timeline is really embarrassing and irresponsible when my constituents come to me and they say, well, when is this happening? Where is my kid going to go? And I still am telling them, I don't know. You know, we have this insistence on pushing this item forward again. We don't have this concrete information, you know, and the administration's willingness to do so, you know, again, is just like, am I comfortable enrolling my child maybe in Roosevelt for a year and then she moves to Grandview? Like, what is going to happen? I do not believe I'm alone in this. We've heard it from other parents and families, like current, future, et cetera. You know, so based on that feasibility report, as I reviewed it again, you know, we have our expected timeline, vote on this month. You know, based on that report, the demographer was actually supposed to be hired in March, and I know that we just learned, at least I just learned, you know, that RFP is due on the 21st. So we very obviously cannot be voting on that this month because that is not enough time to review anything. That is not enough time to consider everything, or even for, like, you know, we may not get respondents. We don't know because it's not March 21st. You know, I understand that the board doesn't see or approve every RFP before it's published, but I did have to find out that this RFP existed just like 3 days ago from Facebook. And if it did come out in an email, I apologize, that was my oversight, but I do not remember seeing it in my board email. But, you know, if that's the case, you know, it really damages the trust, again, between board and administration, board and public, public and administration. You know, and so I just want to make note of that it's like, I'm really glad there's an RFP that's out, but it would have been nice to know when it went out and when it was published. You know, so I can anticipate, you know, as Ms. Yord pointed out, a lot of these questions that we're going to be getting during these hearings of what is this going to cost? What's my new feeder pattern? What is transportation and staffing going to be like? And we have to sit there and say, I don't know. You know, again, doing us no favors. You know, because this demographer's work has not been done. I know we just talked about it today, but, you know, we have constantly been hearing from parents and even students from Conroy who have said, like, this school is so important to me, here is why. And again, I understand the condition of the building, but, you know, still seeing Conroy on this list, I'm like, I feel like we're already not listening to families. Not having the, you know, estimate for repairs for that building. I feel like we're already not listening to our families, listening to the, you know, board members' requests for what these things are going to cost so that we can make these transitions especially for these students, you know, a little bit easier in theirs and their parents' lives, you know. And so it's creating these, you know, lots of rumors, lots of fear. And when we don't have this information as a board, when the administration doesn't have this information, because again, we also still have not hired this demographer, so nobody knows anything, but so people are talking, and so, you know, all of this, you know, it's making it very difficult to communicate with my constituents. You know, and then just based on the RFP, because I did have the opportunity to look at it, it can take up to 90 days for them to complete their work. And so, not that hearings are going to be scheduled immediately right away, and they're not all going to be in succession of each other immediately, but we anticipate that these hearings are going to take about 90 to 120 days, somewhere like these number of months. And so we would have sat through all of these hearings, heard all of these questions of like, well, what's going to happen? And we'll be like, I don't know. We just got the report back from the demographer. And so it again, feels very unfair to our constituents. So, you know, as a project management professional myself, it is my full-time job. You know, the first things, you know, that you do when doing a project, especially of this, you know, caliber, you know, you have to have a sources and uses, you have to have a budget, you have to have, you know, an estimated timeline of the start and end of the project. And we sort of have this start and end, but we certainly don't have anywhere near a budget. We certainly don't have anywhere near, you know, the impacts of our of this to our stakeholders. And so, you know, again, I don't think it's time to be voting on this. As a board, we insist on making data-based and evidence-based decisions, and this is not that. So making decisions without full information, I am entirely not comfortable with that. It will break the already fragile trust that we have. You know, and I think some of these other fallacies are getting in the way of, I already spent all this money, so we may as well just keep going and charge forward. And I don't even disagree that, I don't disagree at all that, you know, the district needs to look at its footprint. I like the grade band changes ideas. You know, there are a lot of positives about, you know, what we have so far, but it needs reworked. And it's okay to pause and not keep following this sunk cost fallacy of like, well, I've spent all this money, so I have to finish. I think it's okay to pause and pivot and just wait. And it's really just flipping a couple steps, but to really make sure that the public gets what they're owed, that the board gets what they're owed, so that we can feel confident in our vote, you know, and actually, you know, provide a state-of-the-art education with it will be a huge transition, but with as few headaches as possible. So that's everything. I had to write it down, and I had to read off of it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Who wants to go next? Somebody? Anybody? Ms. Silk?
Thank you. So where I am right now is that voting on this, or deciding whether, you know, how to vote on this feels like a choice between two bad options. I want to start by saying that I firmly believe that we need to close schools, because we cannot currently ensure that students benefit from the learning opportunities they deserve with too few students spread out over too many schools. We will not be able to avoid disruption when we do this, but I do believe that we can figure out together how to best mitigate that disruption. And I also believe that our students are resilient and can handle the changes to come that we absolutely need to do. I also want to acknowledge that for so many of our students, disruption is not a future experience, but it is happening today. It is happening tomorrow. It happened yesterday. It is disruption to their music and art learning because they do not have a music teacher or an art teacher, or disruption in their math learning because their schools do not offer algebra, and many other examples like that. So the disruption is here. It is not something that is happening in the future as a result of restructuring and reimagining our district. And again, I fully support restructuring our district and closing select schools in order to do so. My current concern is that we do not have much more information now than we did in October when ERS presented their recommendations. We now know that the administration supports most of ERS's recommendations, which is new and helpful, in addition to the new on-site evaluations conducted by the operations team, which are available for the public, and I'm really grateful for that, on PPS's website. I had understood that the projected enrollment numbers and the financial information that was included in the feasibility study was new work by the administration, but now understand that data came from the final ERS report and is not new or revised, and the amount of information that we have is from that late October ERS report. And so I have concerns about initiating public hearings. That phase of the school closure process with this amount of information. I'm unclear how that is going to be meaningful to district decision-making, how that will be meaningful to the public, and help us get to a better place. And I also want to restate, because there are, I think it is at this point clear that there are different recollections of what expectations were. I was surprised during the public meeting in real time when Mr. Blackwell presented the scope of the feasibility study as simply feasible or not feasible, and did say in that public meeting that my understanding from board articulation of the charge was that the leadership team was to evaluate ERS's recommendations, and that we communicated that we would accept a rejection outright of a recommendation without analysis, simply because we trust your professional experience. So if something didn't seem like it was appropriate or going to work for us, let us know, explain it, and we can move on. And also encouraged leadership to add potential solutions that ERS did not identify. And so I'm having a really hard time understanding how, what this public hearing process looks like, given what we know now. And I also know that our students need us to move. And that is a really uncomfortable place to be in, and we will figure out how to navigate that. But that is my understanding of where we are now.
Thank you, Ms. Silk. Director Barker said he's under the weather, but he's thankful for all of your comments to this point, and it doesn't sound likely that he will speak tonight. Dr. Reed?
So my comments will be short. I am really concerned. I think that we could have had like a perfect plan 15 years ago. We will have an imperfect plan. This moving forward, it's going to be hard. We are going to have to trust one another. We're going to have to, and it's going to be really difficult. Unless you're someone like me who does not have like that sentimental bone, closing schools is hard. And restructuring our district is hard. If we were really serving kids very well in our current structure, I'd be like, let's have some bake sales, let's do some raffles, we'll figure it out, let's just go on as we're going. We're not. Like, there are kids like Ms. Silk mentioned who aren't getting art. They're not getting science. There are kids who can't take algebra. It is not fair what we're doing, and we have to act expeditiously. That doesn't mean irresponsibly. It doesn't mean there is some information that I feel like we need to have as we move forward. We need to figure out how to be as transparent as possible with the public, and we need to move. Like, our hair is on fire, right? So we really need to move. We need to make some decisions and create the district that our kids deserve, because that's not what they have right now. And there's part of me that understands that, or that believes there is no amount of information that's going to make this easy. That being said, there is information that we need. So I feel like we as adults, we need to figure this out, figure out what we need to move forward, and move forward expeditiously. So that was it.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Ms. Talaferro, are you ready?
Yeah, although I would really love to hear what you have to say before I speak, but it's okay. I'll go. That's my time. Thank you. So I've kind of been, I had a conversation and I shared very passionately about how I feel about this process. And not gonna lie, that took the wind out of me because it happened yesterday. And so I, at this point in time, feel just rage welding up in my heart, because sometimes I think it is the perspective that there are people who might be afraid to make hard decisions, who want this to be easy when it's not easy. And I said yesterday, I've been doing hard things since 2019. 3 months after I stepped on this board, we had a global pandemic. So I understand what it looks like to make hard decisions at this board table. What I also understand is that when we make decisions flippantly, when we make decisions because we want to run this school district like a corporate business, we miss the point that we are caretakers of children. We sit at this board table, we're responsible for children. And I do appreciate one of the things that Ms. Silk said when she talked about not being able to avoid disruption, right? We're going to be disruptive for quite some time in this process. In fact, I think our kids, for our most passionate parents and for the students who have been speaking at public hearings for almost a year now, they're already disruptive. And there's no real way to stop that train. And that's, I think, what speaks to my concerns. Because we did not approach this process in a way to protect our students from disruption as best as we possibly could. And for that, I am sorry to parents, to community members, to children. I'm sorry that there were people who just felt like they needed to press forward, fast pace ahead to fulfill an agenda that, or a goal that they had before they left this board. And that's unfortunate that we allowed that to be the case. With that being said, I had a couple of questions because I want to have an understanding. So you're asking us to vote this month on starting the public hearing process for the closure of 10 school buildings. These are 10 school buildings that were identified by our consulting firm that should close based on a variety of different reasons. And so I would like to think in preparing to start a process like this month without providing the board members who have been speaking for months about what information, and parents and anybody else in community who have been speaking for months about the information that is most needed to make this decision. And I think I kind of heard just everyone that has spoken already acknowledge that there is information that is missing from this conversation. So with that in mind, we're still going to start a process to close buildings. So my question is, have you determined what these meetings will look like, at what point they will start and then end? Have you put any thought into what these meetings or the schedule of these meetings will look like? That's for you.
You're talking about the public hearings?
Yeah, they're public hearing meetings, yes.
Yeah,
That's
so
what we're talking about.
those are run by the board like our normal public hearings, and I would anticipate that they function in a very similar way as our current public hearing process, but with a specific focus, which is whichever building is being discussed that evening.
And who will be responsible for setting these meetings? Will it be the board? Will it be our board secretary? Will it be the administration? Who will be responsible for setting these meetings?
Based off of my understanding of the process, it is the board secretary will schedule them in consultation with the board and our legal counsel.
So to date, we have no idea even when these meetings will start or how long we will have to go.
Correct, but because we control that process. So we can start them as soon as we want, once the vote authorizes it, or we can wait to start them for as long as we want after the authorization is given.
Okay, and since you're answering all the questions, Mr. Walker, I'm just curious to know, have you put thought into what this should look like, what this process should look like?
I have. I think, my first thought is we need to put ourselves in a position to be able to act when the time is right to act on any and all school closures. And so to delay the authorization of public hearings puts us in a position where when we are able to act and want to, based off of whatever timeline is presented by the superintendent, we're not able to do that in a timely fashion, which delays our ability to implement the plan, to impact student outcomes, and to give our parents and families the appropriate runway to get ready for the changes.
Do you feel
Can I add some more?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to add something. Just by law, if or when it's voted, you do have to wait 15 days to give notice before hearings can start. Just wanted to add that piece of information.
Yes, hence the 3 months and 15 days. Yes.
That is correct.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering at this point, so we don't even know when these meetings will even start, but you're asking us to give a green light to just go ahead and start it. But what I think that is very difficult for me, and I've shared this before, is that I am not certain that starting this process in this moment, or even voting to start this process, well, we could wait to start these meetings in August, let's say, because we can do that as a board, and I'm a board member, so I get to say when these meetings are, because that's what you just told me. So if that's the case, then for me, it is still very difficult to vote to start a process without meaningful information and whether or not any of these buildings should or will actually close. And perhaps there might be other buildings that make sense to close. What I don't understand is like, I know that you all work really hard, and I know that you're doing double duty. I work a full-time job, and I come here to these meetings, and I'm retired. So I understand the struggle. But what I think is bothering me is that it almost feels like a copy-paste. We just took what ERS did and said, oh, we got a lot to do. Let's just say we do what they did. And now here we are. But I'm not sure if it's going to make sense. I'm not sure if what we're going to do is going to actually work. And I asked about the financials. I gave that as an example about financials, and it was reflected that, ERS talked about some cost reductions. When I'm looking at that page, like $10 million, and maybe $0.5 million for buildings that close. But we have buildings, not a lot of buildings, Mr. Joseph, but we have buildings that we still have to pay for, and that we still have to maintain costs. So there are a lot of things to me that have been said that I feel like have not even been acknowledged, or at least the fact that it's like, well, we need more time to do that. So if you need more time to figure out the information that people are asking for, board members are asking for, you're asking me to vote on something, but you're not listening to what I'm telling you that I need more information to even make a decision, that just concerns me. And I have a lot of issues with that. I'm not afraid to make difficult decisions. And I think a lot of people have said that we all acknowledge that we're going to have to do something to change in this district. But I feel like we keep trying to fit a square peg in a round hole just because we already started a process and we got to get it done and we got to get it finished. And we got to just rush to do it. So I don't know. At this point, like, I cannot support starting a process when there's missing information for me to understand and be clear on as a board member. And that's what I'm going to say. And if it's about maybe we have the power to schedule these meetings out, perhaps I can be convinced, but I still won't have the information to start a process. And my concern is, like, we are already moving in a path, and what is going to change? It doesn't seem like we've listened much to the people who show up here on Monday nights. So what is going to change with these public hearings that we legally have to do to at the end say that these buildings will still close? And that's what the concern is going to be. And the last thing I'll say is that I'm always going to ride hard for District 2 school buildings. And when you're trying to close, like, 5 of the buildings in my school board district, then you're going to hear my mouth, and you're going to hear it for a long time, and you might not like it, and it might make you feel uncomfortable, but that's too bad, because we're making kids feel uncomfortable every day when we sit at this table and make shitty decisions and say, like, but we got to make hard, tough decisions. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Reed?
So I agree, Devin, that we have, Ms. Talaferro, that we have some information that we need to get. So I guess where I am is not that we have to hurry up and make a decision or whatever. Where I am is we need to get our ducks in a row such that when it's time for us to make the very difficult decisions we have to make, that we're ready to make them. And that's, the vote isn't that we're gonna close those 10 schools. The vote is we will hear from, we are agreeing that we are going to hear from people when we have the proper information, when we get to the place where we are actually considering closing a school. So that's my understanding of it. And so that's sort of how I'm addressing this particular issue.
Ms. Silk?
Thank you. I I feel similarly, and I'm wondering if it would be a useful exercise even for a go around this evening of what is that information that school directors feel like they need in order to feel confident about moving forward. I also have a process question because our upcoming, I want to remember what they were called, community listening sessions, 'cause names matter. Our upcoming community listening sessions are upcoming. And so going to this, like, making sure our ducks are in a row, my understanding is that those community listening sessions, that is board work, those are meetings that are run by the board, and they are really future-looking around kind of from an asset perspective. What does the community want in this district? This is our imagining time together. What is our North Star? Where do we all want to go? And that then we as a board will develop board goals that we think, and guardrails that will help us achieve that community-informed vision. And so from a process perspective, I think we have a communications challenge that is not insurmountable. We can handle it, but we do need to clearly articulate what is the purpose of these listening sessions, and how are they different from public hearings when we get there. And I'm going to say when, because at some point they are happening, whether it is with this version of the board, and I personally hope that it is, or in the future. So the difference between these listening sessions and these public hearings, I'm wondering what is the, if this does pass, what is, if this does pass next week, what is the, can you remind me how late we can start scheduling these public hearings?
So I think we have the ability to schedule the public hearings as, as far out as we want.
Okay.
So it's not a function of, we voted on Wednesday and they start Thursday, right? Because
That I understand.
So there is that 15, so for every public hearing, there has to be 15 days. Once the hearing is over, then we can't actually vote on that particular building for 3 more months, right? So we,
Oh, so that was the 3 months, is the
right,
after.
so the 3 months
Okay.
is, so the public hearing for each building has to be completed. And then there's a 3-month waiting period before we
Got
can
it.
vote on that particular building.
Okay.
The idea would be we would do all of the public hearings,
Okay.
wait the 3 months, and then vote on the package.
Understood. But
Whatever that
we could
package
also
looks
phase
like.
it.
We could also phase it, absolutely.
We could greenlight, we could vote to initiate public hearings, but then phase public hearings.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're only bound by the 3 months based off of the public hearing for that
Right, for
particular
each
building.
closure.
Correct.
Thank you. So what I would be really interested in knowing, and I imagine the public would as well, is what does this board need in order, what is that information set that this board needs in order to vote to initiate to greenlight the public hearing process for school closure, and to have agreement among the board that we would not start those meetings until that critical information set is in place and available to the board and to the public. That's what I would be really curious to know.
I mean, I think that's certainly something that we can discuss. And I mean, tonight is one of those places to discuss it. I know Ms. Yord has her hand up, so I will let her respond.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And sorry, my video is apparently not working from my computer today. So to Ms. Silk's point about gathering the compiling a list of information that the board would need, I sent my comments on the facilities utilization plan back in February to Dr. Walters and Mr. Blackwell, because I gave substantive comments there. And I sent them all in writing, so I can, taking responsibility for the request for information that I have, I'm happy to read those off to the board and to the public who's watching right now. And then if folks have additional things they want to add, I can take the responsibility of then adding them to this written list and forwarding it again to Dr. Walters and Mr. Blackwell and CCing the entire board so that everybody's on the same page about what that information is. So the list of information that I asked for and have been asking for is budgets related to transportation costs, whether they're going up or down, estimates of any cost savings or cost increases associated with the plan, what the continued maintenance cost would be for the closed schools, because we know we don't just close schools and then like that just magically disappears. There are maintenance costs associated with them until we get them off the books and adequately disposed of. Additional capital costs for school renovations. Other information I asked for was about feeder patterns. We know that's going to be addressed by the demographer. I asked for additional information on how we're going to resource for our English language learning students, how we're investing in them, additional centers that we might put in. And then the other two other things I asked for was disposition plans for old schools, not necessarily, a step-by-step plan at this point, but information on what we might do with some of the old schools, demonstrating that we understand the community's needs around that. And maybe we'll get some of that information in the community listening sessions in April. And then the last thing I asked for was more information on our community schools. They weren't really highlighted in the facilities utilization plan. So I asked for continued information on how we're going to continue to invest in the community schools program, and how school closures would allow us to expand and continue to invest in those community school offerings. So that's what I asked for. If there's any other comments from other board members, again, happy to scribe this all and send it in an email so that everybody's on the same page.
Can I ask a quick question? Are you saying that we need this information about the current plan before we vote on whether or not to open the public hearings? Or are we saying that as we get this information, we can decide whether or not we are going to have public hearings? Like, we will vote to open public hearings, and as we get this information, we'll decide whether or not we're going to open up the public hearings for the closure of a particular school.
Yeah, great clarifying question, Dr. Reed. For me, this is information I would want before voting to move forward with public hearings. I know there are some board members who don't feel that they need that information to move forward with the voting on the public hearings, but so maybe we can just consider this like information that the board needs, I don't know, in the next 4 to 6 months in order to vote on closing schools. Again, for me, it's information that I would want before voting to start the public hearings. But for others, this may just be like, this is additional information that I would want before I vote to officially close schools. So that's kind of a neither here nor there answer, but maybe we can just consolidate all of our information requests in one thing.
Thank you, Ms. Short. Ms. Sill?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just wanted to publicly clarify for myself that if there was a common set of additional information that we as a board agreed on, I would be comfortable voting to initiate the process. I would be comfortable voting on this next week if we were in agreement that we would not actually hold any public hearings until we and the public had access to this information.
Ma'am, sorry to be that person, but if the intention is to just say, okay, I'm going to pass this thing and then I can schedule a hearing whenever I want, then why are we even voting on this if we could just do this individually as like, while the administration prepares, again, the same information that they want, or if there's like a prioritization that the district might have? Because right now this to me it's just a list. I'm like, Dr. Walters, does your team have a priority of like the order that this would happen? Like, it may make more sense to be like, scrap this for now, prioritize it, because if we just still have to wait 15 days to publish it in a newspaper and then like 3 months, sorry, I have the code right in front of me, not less than 3 months prior to the decision, then like why are we having this conversation?
So we certainly have priorities that we've established. However, I work at the pleasure of the board. So if the board needs information in order to make a decision, then I need to have that information as well.
I hate that answer.
And so I know you may not like that answer, but that is the answer. Because if I have a priority list and you don't agree with my priority list, then you come back and you may say,
Right, but we haven't had a conversation about the priority list. You see what I'm saying? Like, we're like between this rock and I'm gonna rant for a little bit.
Okay,
We're
go ahead
between
and
this
rant.
rock and a hard place where it's like, here's 9 board members that all have their opinion, and we've had lots of conversations about this, public and private, et cetera. But like, the board never settled on it. Do we have a priority? And I think it's hard for us to make a priority because we don't have the budget or the feeder patterns or the population changes, what's expected, all these things. And, you know, to a point that Mr. Walker always likes to make is like, here are the experts at our table. And our expert says, well, I can't tell you because it's whatever you want. And so, and I know that's like simplifying it, but that's how, I know, but that simplifies it, but that's exactly what that's the message to me, is like, I can't tell you because you didn't tell me. And so, how am I supposed, and this is me, I'm not speaking for the board, but how am I supposed to like be comfortable with just like this when it's like, well, actually maybe like we can keep kids at Conroy for this many years, but the Friendship building is in really bad condition. So we're gonna put Friendship up here and we can move Conroy down here, but I don't know that. So like, I can't be a mind reader as much as we would all love to be, I'm sure. So like, this is my rock and hard place, is like, I don't even care about this then, because if we don't have to actually vote on this, and there's like, there are 15 days and 30 days prior to closing, and da-da-da-da-da, we don't need to be talking about this until we have the information that we want, which, to Ms. Silk's point, I think we can figure out and agree on.
so I'd like to clarify what I said and what I did not say. So what I said is we do have a priority list. But what I am also saying is that if the board is asking for information to inform a decision, then certainly I need to provide that to the board in order to inform the decision.
I would
So
like
if you're
the
asking me for the priority list,
in
and
our
then if that's what
requested
you're asking for,
information.
then we can include that. However, the voices from board members are saying, I would like this in order to inform my decision. So my priority list may be null and void, but now you're asking for the priority list, then I can add that to the list of what you need to inform your decision. But to answer your question, I do have a priority list. But I'm also acknowledging the fact that board members, different board members across around the table and online, are stating that they have shared things that they would like to inform a decision.
Thank you. Yes, to Ms. Silk's point.
And just a clarification point too from earlier, that in our plan, it does not say this month for demographer, it says next month.
I may have been looking at an older version, but
Okay,
thank
just
you.
wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. But so, yes, Mr. Walker, I would like, maybe not tonight, but to Ms. Silk's point, is have this conversation of what our priorities are, because I don't know at this point anymore. Dr. Walters, I would like to see what your priority list is, because you are the expert here and you know these schools and you've been here for how many years? Working your way through it, so you're very
Enough.
familiar. Yes, and I would appreciate that kind of information. So I still think that this needs to be tabled until we have that additional information, but it would allow us to be much, even just that list would just help me to be much more informed, in addition to things like budgets, feeder patterns. So I think we need to wait for the demographer, but I will stop there. Thank you.
Mr. Udine.
Thank you. When we first started this conversation, I expressed my concern and my priority and my fear that we were making decisions based on dollars and cents and demographic data, and not the academic goals that we want to achieve and we need to achieve. So I just want to place on the table my continued concern that that we place academic performance and achievement at least as high on the agenda, on the priority agenda, at least as high as um, budgetary concerns. And I think that the report from and the recommendations from the consultants missed the boat on that. And I think that our discussion needs more focus on the academic achievement and the plans for improving academic achievement more so than just our plans for fiscal balancing and fiscal considerations. So I just want to make sure that that is on the table and that our plans going forward include academic achievement and especially for the students who are performing poorest in the district. Our job is not just to accommodate the budget, but to accommodate our children's need for academic excellence. And I don't hear that being included in our priorities, and I want to put it on the table again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Trying to think where I want to start. So I'll start here. I agree with just about everything everyone has said. I think there is certainly information that that is missing or incomplete or needed before a vote to physically close a school can happen. Like, I believe that to the bottom of my heart, that there is no way that we could get to a place where we say, yes, we're going to close this school or that school with the information that we have today. So I agree. Where I disagree is in the assumption that we cannot position ourselves to be able to make those decisions in a timely manner by holding off on this procedural vote. And so here's what this vote would do. Well, let's start with what it won't do. This next vote does not close a single school. No school would be closed, no feeder pattern would change, no students would be displaced by opening the public hearing comment. It does not eliminate our ability to change the final plan if we gain more information that says X school should not close because of whatever the reason is. We'll use Conroy as an example, since that's been the favorite child of folks commenting, right? If we determine through public hearing and through the additional work that will be done over the course of several months that indeed the Conroy building, it makes more sense to renovate than it does to close, then we have that public hearing, but then when we go to vote, we just don't vote to close it, right? So we still have opportunities to make changes as we get more information. What I'm really interested in is giving not just the administration and the district, but our families and students the longest runway to prepare for whatever change might come their way over the course of 2 to 3 years as we do this plan. And so any delay in that either pushes that out further, which may not be the worst thing in the world, or it shortens that runway for transition, which makes the transition harder. And so, in my opinion, right, a vote to start public hearing just positions us to be able to act affirmatively or negatively when the time comes that we have the information that's needed to make that decision. Waiting a month, waiting 2 months, pushes that decision into a space where we're not able to do that in a timely fashion which is kind of what happened this time around, right? Initially, we were gonna think about closing schools in the 25-26 school year. We made decisions that pushed that out of range. A delay now pushes that even further out of range. And so the challenge with that is if we're truly interested in impacting in a positive manner the outcomes of our kids, waiting hurts kids. We know what's happening right now. We know it's not good for the vast majority of our students, and waiting doesn't make it better. So we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, what are we really interested in? Like, I don't want to close schools. Like, nobody does. But I am interested in this generation of kids and the next having a possibility of great schools. And by waiting, we push that possibility off a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And that, in my opinion, is not fair. There's no perfect way to do this, right? I think there is a way. I think the reason why these school closure processes go the way they go is because that's kind of how they go. I think we can look all across the country, and any school district is having this conversation is probably going through a similar process. And as clunky as it is, I think that's just how it goes. And to assume, we hired a consultant, we asked them to do a job in coordination with our administration and their leadership. They did that job. The administration took that report and affirmed 99% of that report as what they believe is the right path forward. So to assume that they were going to give us different recommendations or new recommendations or a whole nother set, I think invalidates the work and time and money spent on a consultant. And so I wasn't at all really shocked at the conclusions that came from the feasibility study. I think a good portion of the transportation analysis, the financials, the feeder patterns are all in the final recommendations that we got in October that were affirmed in February by Dr. Walters and his team. Are there areas that aren't quite figured out yet? Sure, because we're creating new schools that don't have feeder patterns, and so we need to figure that out. But I don't necessarily believe that understanding where my kid might go to school 3 years from now changes how I feel about a building closing today. And I might be wrong, but I just don't see how that makes an impact on the discussions that we will have through the public hearing process, because I've never seen them go particularly positive. But the other thing that I do know is I think that folks that show up to public hearing are a small percentage of the folks who have an opinion on this, and the folks that agree with us are less likely to come out and talk to us about it. I've had those conversations both in schools and out of schools with families, with teachers. They just don't show up here because they understand that this is a thing that needs to happen and that we should do. And so the folks that are going to come and voice their opinion 9 times out of 10 are going to be the folks that don't agree with us or have never agreed with us or potentially sat in this room doing this work and refused to do it on their own. And so my last point is we have a responsibility to finish what we started. We've been at this for 14 months. If that is slow, or if 14 months is too fast, I'd hate to see the alternative. By the time we actually get to a vote, it will be 18 to 19 months since we started this. I think it would be highly irresponsible if this collection of board members did not make a decision one way or the other on what to do with this plan and leave it for someone else, just like the last board did to us and the board before that did to them. And so if we want to be different, if we truly want to be transformative, then we have to be willing to live in that uncomfortable space that says, I'm okay taking one step, but there is other information that I need before I take the next, and I think we all agree with that. But positioning ourselves to be in a space where we can make a decision when the time comes is the job that we're being asked to do today. And so that is my opinion. I think, we will certainly have more conversation next week, and I will welcome that conversation next week as we continue to work through this. If the decision is made to move forward, then I personally think it's the right thing to do. If the decision is made to wait, I will firmly disagree with that decision because I think it's our responsibility right now to act. Please.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, I have a clarifying question on the, Mr. Walker had mentioned if we end up waiting X number of days. So that doesn't even matter. Is there a deadline to, that the PA Department of Education has that we need to say hey, I'm thinking about closing schools? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. There are notice provisions.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Weiss, I don't mean the 15-day publication and the 30 days. Okay.
There are notice provisions when you are reconfiguring a school. You must give notice to the department. Sitting here right now, I can't tell you what it is. I want to say it's maybe June, but I don't want to give a date that I don't have in front of me. You also do have to give them notice that you're closing a building.
Right.
So yes, once the board, if and when the board makes a decision to close a building or to reconfigure them, which is different, you don't need a public hearing for closing a building if you're reconfiguring it. You must give notice to the department with their records, and we have provided that timeline before to the administration, and I'll provide that to the board so you'll have that as well.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm looking at the website, and I am no lawyer, but it does say July 31st or the last Friday before July 31st. And I want to ask, and please confirm that, and please send to the whole board, but I do want to clarify too, is that, again, to open this hearing process or say, I am closing this school for what would it be? As a purely example, 26-27 school year, 25-26 school year.
There's no requirement as to when you open the process.
Okay.
The requirement is when you notify them once you've made a decision to close a building or to reconfigure a building.
Understood. Okay.
Well, I think maybe I should clarify, I'm not suggesting that we are making a decision or a vote to close schools.
Oh, no, I
this
wasn't
summer.
saying that.
Okay.
I also just wanted.
Yeah, because it's the earliest we would be looking at is September, October, November of
Right.
this year that would then affect the following.
Right, so
school
my
year.
point being is that, again, I don't think delaying this vote delays it 2, 3, 4 years. Literally, I'm just saying I want the demographer to do their job first, and then I want to open the thing. That, again, is just me, but because we would have more of that information, because again, public hearings, whether we get the same people that we see on Mondays or new people or whatever, they need to have the most information that they can have too, so that they're not repeating the same things that they've been repeating for the last 12 and 18 months. And if you think that 14 months is slow, please work for the government.
No, I said fast, because everyone's saying,
If you think
that we're rushing.
Yeah, if you think it's fast, please work for the government, because I've been working on things for 3 years.
I work for pseudo-government.
But that's my point, is just that since we don't actually have a deadline to say we're gonna open it, I don't think it kills anybody to be let's just wait for the demographer to do the thing, because then I think it allows the public to look at it, digest it. We don't need then the rest of Dr. Walters' plan and his team's plan, just like the demographer information, because it's more than just demographics. But again, and I know I've talked to my colleagues and stuff, and people outside that I've talked to, would be more comfortable to at least be okay, what is it? Can I have some semblance of an idea of just where I live and how that is impacting, especially for East End folks, because right now there's a big question mark. And they're gonna be the most impacted with the number of schools closed. South Hills folks, okay, we got one. It's not actually it's a big deal, but it's not the East End where it's I literally don't know where I'm going. I would like to know. So I think that, waiting this 90 days for the demographer, literally just flipping steps, I think makes the most sense. I know we all want to get out of here. I know we don't need to have a decision made, but I will argue the same thing next week if it's still on the agenda. But I think that is the most sensible and a good compromise. And now I'll stop there.
And I will disagree. I will disagree that postponing it even 30 days pushes us too far. 90 days pushes a potential vote to actually close the school into 2026, which then leaves it for whatever this board looks like in 2026. And so what I'm saying is that we started this work. We should finish this work. We should not drop that on the 5 board members who are going to be sworn in December. And so pushing it 90 days will certainly push that beyond that time limit. And I'm not comfortable asking those 5 board members, whoever they are, even if they end up being mostly the same, I don't believe that is the right thing to do. Ms. Yord?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walker. I just wanted to clarify one comment that you made. You stated that the feeder patterns were in the presentation that we got in October and that we got again in February, right?
Yeah, so there is a mostly completed feeder pattern in the October presentation that has been adjusted slightly by Dr. Walter's presentation by adding Dilworth and a couple other schools that don't have feeder patterns currently. So that East End feeder pattern is the one that's mostly up for debate. The rest of it is fairly standard, although I think there's some cleaning up that has to happen in certain areas because we still have students that are being driven past several elementary schools to get to other elementary schools, and I don't know if that necessarily makes sense. But it is in that proposal.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because there's 6 elementary schools in the East End that don't have a middle or a high school in any type of feeder pattern. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's based off of the changes that Dr. Walters and his team made to that, because when we're adding, we're making Obama a neighborhood magnet, it currently doesn't have a feeder pattern. If we're taking Dilworth and turning it into a neighborhood school, it doesn't currently have a feeder pattern. And so those feeder patterns, while they're somewhat worked out in the ERS proposal from October, are a little more ambiguous here because we know that we have to create pathways for kids to flow through those schools where they don't already occur. And so that information is certainly valid and relevant as we look at what is, in my mind, a complete implementation plan over the course of several years, but I don't know if it necessarily changes my mind about what we should do today or next week.
Okay, so before we close out this wonderful meeting that we've spent our time in today, you've been disagreeing with a lot of things tonight, so I would like to disagree with 2 things that you said.
Go for it.
The first thing you brought up is waiting hurts our kids. Rushing through a process also hurts kids. So I just want to say that. The second thing, I have a hard time. So I know when I made the decision to run for school board, I was running to serve my constituents, the people that I represent. They voted for me to sit at this seat and make decisions on their behalf. I have a hard time when you dismiss people, whether or not they show up to these meetings or public hearings every Monday or every month on Monday to speak, whether or not you agree or disagree with what they have to say and who shows up, we still represent those people. And I have a hard time when we dismiss public. When we dismiss the people that we represent, the voices that we represent. We all know that there are people that are missing from this conversation, have historically been missing from this conversation. I don't know how we reach those people, and I really hope that we figure it out one day, because then maybe these conversations will look different when we say that it's just a select few people who have a problem. We're talking about the Easton feeder patterns and having to create new feeder patterns and not being up in the air. Those are the people that I represent. Those are the voices that I hear every day that are like, what the hell is going to happen with my child? I do not know. That is real concern. And I think that when we I don't know. I think when we just dismiss it because it's just like, well, those people, they're just going to be upset and people are going to be upset. That bothers me. Because I know why I'm sitting at this table. I don't know why you're sitting at this table, but I know why I am sitting at this table. You said that these processes go how they go, but we are the deciders of the process. We actually can do it differently than what has been done before and what's being done all across the country. We actually can do it differently. So to say that it's just how the process is how it is, to me, again, it's dismissive of representation. So I just want to say that because you say a lot of things as the board president on behalf of the board, and it is not on behalf of me. We have a responsibility to finish what we started, but we actually have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to finish what you started. Now, I have to sit at this board table and make the tough decisions because you started a process that maybe didn't have as much thought or understanding as it should have. So I just want to say that. We don't often get spicy with each other at this board table, but I've been at this board table when it's gotten spicy, and I have to say, that's what I have to push back on. How you have handled this process is unfortunate to the people that we represent. How you speak about the people that we represent is unfortunate. And it actually just pisses me off. So with that, I'm done.
I appreciate your comments. I will accept if I've been disrespectful. I don't know if I have been, but I will accept that if that's the case and folks feel that way. I would never think that I'm dismissive because I think there are voices that we hear every day that aren't loud and public that should be taken into account. And I can tell you, personally, I've heard many more voices in favor of what we're doing than those that oppose it. And so I think I live down the street. I talk to people all the time.
That represent a whole other side of the river. Okay. Maybe you should go visit them.
Sure. I'm happy to. I've entertained conversations with anyone and everyone who's wanted to talk to me. And if anybody says that I haven't, they're not telling the truth. Because I show up in every space where I'm asked to show up. I think there's a misunderstanding that, listening, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Listening does not obligate me to do what you tell me to do. Listening means that I hear what you're saying, I take it into consideration, and make a decision based off of all of the input that I get, not just the select and the loudest. And so if I have 30 families telling me, you're doing a great job, keep doing it because this is going to be good for our kids, but 5 families telling me the opposite, who do I listen to? That's the question that we have to answer. And the problem is with this process and any process that we have is that the 30 families aren't coming to these meetings, aren't talking to the news, aren't speaking up at PTA meetings. How do we change that? I don't know. I wish I did. If we had an answer to how to do it better, we would have done it. If we could guarantee that it would work out, we would do it. But I know it's not working, and that's what we're doing now. And if we don't change it, it's just going to stay the same. There are other things on this agenda that I thought would get some comment, and we can open up for those as well. If we have exhausted ourselves on this topic for the evening, we will leave space for it next week as well. Ms. Sook?
I wasn't exhausted. I do just want to say speaking for myself, that I disagree with that assessment of how you've led this process. I think that this is incredibly challenging, and I think that previous school boards have not done this work, and so here it is, and that we are doing it imperfectly, and we are where we are now, and we are the ones who are going to do whatever is going to happen next. And so from a process perspective, and that might be me buzzing, and I'm not sure why, just gonna keep going. From a process perspective, I am wondering what we as a board might elevate and make transparent to the public between now and next Wednesday around what is not all of the information that we want to know, but what are those critical pieces of information that we think are important in order to have the most successful public hearings that we can have. They're not going to be the perfect public hearings. They're not going to be the magical moment that makes us all better, but what are those critical pieces that we want to make sure are in place so that we are clear and the public is clear, that is our collective understanding as we move forward, regardless of how the vote shakes out next week. That's what I'm wondering about, like how we operationalize that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense over the next couple of days if we compile that list. So Ms. Yord sent hers, and I'm sure she can email it. We can consolidate those with the board secretary to then be shared in some public fashion. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm sure we can. I think that, I mean, I would be fine with that as a starting point. I think obviously there's still discussion that has to be had before we vote on Wednesday. So I expect that will happen in the various ways that discussions between boards happen. But I think this was an important time for us tonight, for sure, because we haven't had necessarily an opportunity to do it before, without sitting through a 3-hour meeting, and I recognize that. So yeah, I think, I don't necessarily, I mean, I wouldn't be, I won't say that. I'm just gonna hold that one. Yeah, that's my thought. And I'm happy to take other recommendations on how we present that information or compile it for use. Yes.
Yeah, I just have to co-sign that. I don't think that the way that you've handled the process, it's a board process. Like, we've all voted to move on certain things. We're voting to stop certain things where I don't think that the problems with the process lie specifically with you, Jean. I'm sorry, I cannot call people by their last names with you, Mr. Walker. But I do think that we're responsible for this. So we just have to, it's very hard. We have to do that hard thing. So let's do it.
All right. I would like to open the floor if there are any other agenda items that we did not get to. I know that we have the very controversial TRID for the Manchester area that's on the agenda this month. If we don't have the appetite to talk about that, I'm happy to open space for it next week, but I think this is the probably the best and appropriate place to do that. But if there are no comments, then we'll leave it as is. Yeah, go for it, Ms. Silk.
I'm buzzy, sorry, friends. Is it terrible? Okay. I had a clarifying question about, oh, thank you. Okay, is that better? I'm not plugged in here, so I can just move this. I had trouble just understanding the difference between 1002 and 1011, the board tabs for the, I think it was the lead testing. Was that simply because they were different schools being tested for each one?
Good evening, Mike McNamara, Chief Operations Officer. Yeah, we're doing it in two groups because of the amount of testing, so we're having actually two different companies provide testing for two different groups of buildings.
Thank you so much. And then for 12.01, the geophysical survey at Arsenal, do we know when that survey work would happen? And if it's happening while school is in session, I was curious if the personnel conducting the survey would be in uniform on school grounds.
I apologize, I don't know the exact date that they are going to be doing that, and I also do not know if they will be in uniform performing the test either.
Okay.
I can find out.
Yeah, that would be great. I would just like to know if it looks like there's like military personnel on a school site. Thank you.
All right, it appears that we have said all that we need to say tonight. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention and for all of your comments. I wish you all a safe travels home if you are out, and we will see you on Monday. Have a good rest of your week.